Let's file this story under the heading, Sometimes the Solutions to Challenges We Face Are Right in Front of Us. And if the challenges we're grappling with are rising bills and shrinking incomes, or how we might carve out time to do the important work of community building amidst schedules already filled to overflowing, one possible answer is the work of the Time Trade Circle. Active in the Arlington area since 2005, its out-of-the-box approach to economics has nevertheless gone unnoticed by some. To help me correct that oversight and shed some light on the Time Trade Circle are two active members, Ann Ellinger, an Arlingtonian for the past 30 years and a Time Trade Circle member for the last several, and Lynn Rosenbaum, a local leader of orientations who has participated in 188 time trade exchanges over the past 6 years. Welcome both.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks for having us.
Probably the place we best start is give people who aren't familiar with the Time Trade Circle a sense of what it is. The website characterizes the circle as a local bank, but one that keeps track of time rather than money. What does that mean exactly? How does the Time Trade Circle work?
Well, if I do some act of service for you, I mow your lawn and it takes me 1 hour, I get to bank 1 hour, and then I can use that hour for anything. There's lists of people there who are offering other things. Like say, oh, I need a ride to the airport. I could use it for something like that. So every person who's part of it offers services. 1 hour is worth 1 hour, no matter who puts it in. And then you accumulate, instead of money, you accumulate hours that you can spend.
And I suppose one thing that we had talked about in our correspondence back and forth was a distinction between a concept maybe that more people are familiar with, and that is of bartering, with that of time banking or time trading. So the distinction between those two.
So we actually have a network of about 1,000 members in the Boston metro area. So you have a lot of people to trade with. So if, as using Ann's example, if I mowed your lawn, you don't owe me anything in particular. I'm not looking for you to do something for me. Rather, I can take that time that I've earned and use it with somebody else in the network. So it greatly expands the possibilities of trading so that you can connect with a lot of different people, and it's much more likely that I'll get my needs filled and you'll get your needs filled.
Right. So let's go to that place. In terms of, certainly in looking at the website, it's suggesting that, computer services to video editing and loads of things in between. Please give viewers a sense of what would they find upon becoming members were services that they could conceivably receive from other members. What would they find, and how could they be helped?
There's as many possibilities for services as your imagination can come up with. So there's from the very practical and mundane things like giving rides, or cooking food, or helping somebody walk their dog, or gardening, so household activities. And then there's the kind of esoteric, like teaching somebody how to make their own yogurt, or one of the most interesting trades that I ever did was somebody who was trying out their stand-up comedy routine, and they wanted an audience. So I got to go and sit and be an audience, and she was actually really excellent, so it was very fun, a fun trade. But really, it's any sort of service. Often it's teaching somebody how to do something, so empowering them to get the skills to speak another language or get ongoing tutoring. So it's really a wide range, and people who join often think, well, what could I possibly offer? I don't have any skills that I could lead. But everybody finds something that they can contribute, whether it's something as simple as just I just saw one recently that was providing a wake-up call to somebody who needed help getting up in the morning.
That's great.
Right? So you don't need a special skill for that. You just need to be able to remember to call somebody. So.
And there's some everyday things, like I've heard there's a whole babysitting network, because that's obviously a real need for many, many people. And I like the idea that like some of us rely on our few generous friends a little bit too often for favors, and so this is a way you can kind of spread it around and know that every person feels like they're being treated fairly. Kind of on the other side of it, there's some people who are, always doing for other people, but eventually feeling resentful, like, hey, how come my neighbors don't help me back? And I feel like part of the beauty of this is that you can make things as even as possible, but again, it doesn't have to be just you give to me and I give to you.
There are a few things operating here. One is that these exchanges do not involve money, which the rest of our economy is largely based upon, yeah? Which to me is part of its beauty, yeah? The other thing is that there is an equivalency to the time, as you said. My hour has the same value as your hour in terms of our exchanges. And coming from a culture and an economy which feels very strongly about certain people with certain prized professions earning more. Has there ever been sort of the sense, maybe Lynn, you can speak to this, that some people feel that their time should be more or less highly valued than other people's time?
Yeah, and I think that's what's unique and creative about this kind of system, is that it kind of levels the playing field for everybody. So in the traditional economy, if you're a lawyer offering legal services, you're going to earn a lot more per hour than if you're providing childcare services. And yet, maybe somebody feels like, someone who spends time with my child, that's just as, if not more important to me than legal services. So in this system, everything gets equalized based on time, and it's really about what's important to the individual. So if I feel like it's important to get childcare for my child, that has a high value for me. If you feel like you need legal services because you have a legal question, that becomes very important to you. So it's really based on how individuals value those services. And people use the time trade circle in different ways. So some people do post an offer of their professional services, particularly for people some people use it to actually build up their business. So for example, somebody's a massage therapist and they say, I could use some more clients. I'm going to allot 3 slots per week to clients who pay for this through time trade. And so it helps them to kind of get the word out about their services. Somebody else may feel like, well, I'm already earning good money with my professional work. I don't want to do that for time, but there's some other things that, skills I don't get to use or things I enjoy doing that I want to offer. So people will choose how to interact with the time bank based on their needs and their values around paid work and unpaid work.
So really, the opportunities to give or receive, well, as you said at the outset, are limited by our imaginations. I mean, it can be what we do in our professional lives, and if we don't want a busman's holiday, it's just our avocations and what would I like to give to the world and my neighbors.
Right, and it's very self-monitoring. I like that too, where, well, I won't offer my $300 an hour services if it makes me feel resentful. I can just, people monitor themselves that way. You can participate as much or as little as you want. So there's a lot of requests for just one-time help. And I think there's people who would love to volunteer and do community service, but they don't have like 3 hours a week regularly, which most organizations want. Right. So it's great that way. You monitor, you just make it fun and work for yourself by how much you give or take.
And yet, to a certain extent, I suppose that therein lies maybe one of the particular challenges of time banking, insofar as in our economy, money makes it very easy to have an exchange, yeah? And I don't feel necessarily a connection to you if you've provided me with a service, if I can compensate it with money, right? But are there particular challenges, and I'm thinking more in the neighborhood of communication and really establishing this is what I want to do, this is how I'd like the time, I want to include travel time, as the website says. does this provide an opportunity to become better communicators about what it is that we want to do and how we want to do it?
Well, I like that way of phrasing it. I would say, absolutely. Just like, dealing with your family relationships provides that opportunity to set boundaries. So there certainly are people at Time Trade who will help you if you're confused about what you should charge or not, or if you run into some difficulty with somebody where you feel like, oh, I'm not being treated well in this trade. There's help for that. But yeah, it really is counting on each person speaking up for themselves. Right. And it's a good training ground, like you say.
I should loop back. The Time Trade Circle started in Cambridge, I gather, back 2005. However, certainly people in neighboring communities and probably relatively far-flung are welcome to join in and conceivably start getting more local people to them involved in the Time Trade Circle as well. How, at the present moment, how far-flung is Time Trade Circle?
Well, so the Time Trade Circle is not unique. There are hundreds of time banks around the country and around the world, actually. And just here in Massachusetts, when I last checked, there were 13 active time banks. So although there's no specific geographic boundaries on the Time Trade Circle, it's basically Boston metro area. And if you start to go south, you can find that Jamaica Plain has its own time trade, time bank. They're all called slightly different names. And I believe there's a couple on Cape Cod. And then if you head north, there's one in Lynn, there's one in Lowell. If you head west, there's one in Worcester. So, I would say it's sort of, there's no specific boundaries, but it tends to localize around the Boston-Cambridge region because as people get further out, they can find more local neighbors to work with.
I've heard, now can you do trades between?
Yes. So that's what I was going to mention. There's something called intertrading. And this is relatively a new addition which allows people from one time bank to trade with people from another. So if you, there's a couple ways you would use this. One is if the service you need does not require face-to-face time, like let's say somebody's going to do some online editing for you or a phone consultation about some topic. It doesn't matter where they live, right? The other really interesting use of this is if people are traveling to another part of the country, another part of the world, and let's say they would like to find a local resident to show them around town. They might look up, oh, let's see if there's a time bank in this city, and we could exchange. So there's a lot of, again, creativity in how you use this.
I love that, yeah. And I'm also part of a nonprofit called True Story Theater, and I was just actually talking to the coordinator today. Nonprofit organizations can also join the Time Trade Circle, and we're given a goodly chunk of hours, like in the bank, just for joining. And so then when people volunteer for us, they can earn hours, and we can earn hours. I mean, we can use the hours to get volunteers. So I was thinking, oh, maybe ACMi could do that.
Right.
Yeah, right. So you could be earning hours for your volunteer service here.
Yeah, I like that.
That would be nice, right? I was going to say one other thing geographically. I'm really interested in building up the number of participants in Arlington, partly because I hate driving anywhere. And so I try to have my life be as much Arlington-based as possible. So I just think there's huge potential for it to spread in Arlington specifically, and that way it plays double duty of really getting to know people and building a sense of community in a town, and also not having to drive far to get things that you want.
Sure. Yeah. Well, Lynn, you said neighborhood of 1,000 members in the Time Trade Circle. Do you have a sense as to how many of those are Arlingtonians? Do we know those numbers?
I don't know that number offhand, but that's something you can. All of this is done online on a website, and so there's a lot of different search functions. So let's say you only want to look for people to trade with who live in your immediate area. You can search on Arlington, and just those people will come up. So there are a fair amount. I don't know the exact numbers.
Okay. And it sounds like a reasonable degree of functionality on the website in terms of making those subgroups for yourself if you want to.
Yes, and you can also search, people form other kind of subgroups around particular interests as well as geographic areas.
Sure. As difficult as it is to speak for 1,000 other people, let's try to do that. A sense as to why people are joining Time Trade Circle. Is it economics? Is it a recession? Is it philosophy and way of looking at the world? Community building? Do you have a sense? And it probably is all of those and more.
Yeah, well, I think it is all of those and more. I know for myself, when I joined, one of the main reasons was economic. I was underemployed at the time, and this seemed like a great way to be able to save some money. And for me, it was also going back to this idea of equalizing of the value of services. There were things I wanted to do that I wasn't getting paid for, and so I felt like I could offer those services, like, for example, cooking. I love to cook, but I'm not a professional cook. But through the Time Trade Circle, I have actually a monthly kind of gig where I cook for a large cooperative house that has a monthly potluck and likes to start with a few main dishes. So it's a chance for me to use those skills. And definitely the community aspect. I learned about the Time Trade Circle through a friend of mine, and that was kind of, what drew me in. And I've since met lots of other kind of like-minded people that I've gotten to know.
Yeah, and I would say the community part is what drew me. I was interested to read other reasons. I really like the idea that people who are new to a profession, like I think especially younger people just coming out of college, that you can practice your profession in a way to build experience and referrals that way. That seems a smart way to do it. I also relate to wanting to do something different from your regular work. So I'm mostly just like sitting at the computer and on the telephone during the day. So the idea that I could exchange something where I was doing gardening or moving my body in some way is great. I like the idea just of, this is more from the user side, but I like the idea of being able to ask a neighbor to drive me to the airport. Just makes it a friendlier ride, but the fact that I'm not, because I could pay for it, that's where I start feeling like, oh, why should I make someone do that drive if I could pay for it? And this way it's like, well, then it's fair, they get hours.
Right. I note from the site, and you were talking about the subgroups that live within the Time Trade Circle. One of them, I gather, is a childcare, sort of a childcare group. People are also offering minor home repairs, I note, on the site. So the question that I thought of was, Corey in childcare circumstances, liability or bonding in terms of people working on our houses. Are those services that the Time Trade Circle goes through on members who offer those services? How do you encourage members to do due diligence for themselves when they're looking for help?
Right. So we often do get that question. The Time Trade Circle as an organization does not vet members or provide liability for any of that. So it's really up to the individuals. And we encourage people to, just like if you were hiring somebody for a service, you would ask them maybe for referrals, or you would ask what their background is and ask to see any certification. So it's the same thing. If you're looking for service, you might put out a request and hear back from 5 people, and you might interview all 5 of them to find the one that you think is going to be the best match. And for things like childcare, as a way to kind of address this issue, like, hiring a stranger to come take care of my kids, people have formed a childcare group where they have some get-togethers where people can meet face-to-face, get to know each other in a little bit more of an informal and intimate setting, to make that transition a little bit easier. But it's really up to the individuals to, we can't guarantee the value of people or truthfulness of what people are offering. It's really...
Right. So it's absolutely the responsibility of members to take those precautions and exercise good judgment.
I think there are, is there now sort of like a recommendation place, like if you've experienced someone's service, I think you can write a little note saying, or there's how satisfied you are.
Yeah,
like
it's just a yes or no. Were you satisfied or not? It's not a particular rating system. It's just a yes or no. So you can see how many trades somebody else has done and whether they were satisfactory or not.
Okay. I'm sure that everybody who's been actively involved in time trades has a story of a particular exchange that, for whatever reason, was particularly memorable. And I imagine each of you has one. And maybe that too gives some sense to viewers who haven't experienced this, what it looks like from a personal point of view. So if you would share an exchange memory.
Mine is really simple. It doesn't sound that exciting, but it was very exciting to me, of finding a really skillful seamstress who lived 10 minutes from my house. And like, really, I have some pants that I adore that have been waiting to be altered for at least 10 years in my drawer. I mean, I keep wearing them, but they needed work. And so I was so excited, and she was so competent and so efficient. I brought her way more than those pants, just all these things that I had been waiting to trade, and I loved that practicality and was happy to spend my hours on that. Plus, I enjoyed her, and we might have more of a connection than just seamstress, so that was a good one. Yeah.
Thank you.
So mine's kind of interesting. There was a woman who put out a request for tutoring in English. And this was a woman who lived in a senior residence, and she had a lot of extra hours. She had one of the early members of the Time Trade Circle who had built up a lot of hours. And she really wanted to help out a couple of the staff at this residence, the cleaning and cooking staff, who were recent immigrants from Brazil, and they wanted some help with their English. They already spoke English, but they wanted to improve it. And so we kind of set up this arrangement where they were able to get permission from their supervisor to, set aside an hour a week to receive some tutoring, and I went and met with them on a weekly basis for about 6 months and practiced our English together. And it was a great experience. I think they appreciated it. I really liked them and just enjoyed meeting with them. And again, I felt a sense of purpose and meaning that I was helping out some people. And it was kind of a win-win for everybody, so that's great.
I have one other story that's of a friend of mine who is a Time Trade member, and so she has, like you were saying, a regular cooking thing, really weekly, where she just, when she's cooking, she cooks some extra and delivers it every week, a bunch of meals to someone who has a disability. And so she's, on purpose, banked a lot of hours because she was finishing her doctorate in sociology, had this, overwhelming research project with all kinds of data entry, and so she could never have afforded to hire someone to put in these hundreds of hours, but she had banked it, and she did it through Time Trade. I thought that was really clever. She also, when her in-laws come to visit, she gets through Time Trade someone to clean their house. So that seemed two very different kinds of uses.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's great. Well, hopefully, the input that you've both provided in the stories have encouraged viewers to, geez, I'd like to learn more. So the question is, how can they do that? Certainly the website is an entrance point to do that. Anything else they need to do in order to start doing exchanges?
Right. So the website is timetradecircle.org, and it's free to join. The only requirement is that you attend a 1-hour orientation. And we do that. People often say, well, why do I need to go to an orientation? Can't I just read about how to join? Partly we want to make sure everybody has the basic information, but also we want people to start meeting each other because this is a community building site. And people often think, well, I don't really have anything I could trade, or what would I offer? And when one of the exercises we do in the orientation is people brainstorm, an a service that they could provide and a service they might want. And people start to hear other ideas in the room, and then they get an idea. And then they might even meet somebody. Oh, you offer computer help? I really need somebody to fix my computer. And right away, they've made a connection. So we offer those orientations at least once a month. There's one in Cambridge coming up in June. And that's all you have to do. You can go onto the website to check when the next orientation is. And one of the great perks is that you start with 5 free hours. So as soon as you join up, you can start spending your hours right away.
There you go.
I love that. When I put my money in the bank, they don't say,
exactly,
here's $500 to start, you know?
True
So,
is there anything else you can imagine that we haven't talked about today that would be good for viewers to know about the group, how to get started, how to think about, geez, what do I have to offer my community? And what might I like in return, too? Anything?
I mostly just want to encourage people to give it a try. That, again, like I was saying, there's no requirement to participate at a big level. So I went many months without doing any trades, and then I found something that was really meaningful. So if you can afford the 1 hour to just learn it and join, just try it, see what happens. Yeah.
And I also wanted to add that this is a completely volunteer-run organization, which is pretty amazing given that we have 1,000 members. And so it's really a labor of love. You know, we have a board and we have coordinators who are giving their time, which they're also earning time by supporting the Time Trade Circle. But they put in, you know, way above the hours that they end up needing. So it's really a community where people are joining because they want to be part of something. It's not only for the economic reasons. And so I think there's an open kind of spirit about it where people really enjoy the connections they make, and it's deeper than just hiring somebody to come. You actually, you know, create this deeper connection.
And this is probably stating the obvious, but really all are welcome. So it's any age, race, sexual orientation, amount of money or not, it's a wide open door.
That's great.
Yeah.
And even if somebody doesn't have ability to use the online website, we have people who can help with that. So for example, some older seniors who may not know how to use the website, or somebody who has a disability and needs help, we have, again, volunteers who their role is to help people with that function.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that we've encouraged Arlingtonians to jump on.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Thank you.
We'll check in again. Absolutely. You have some skills you could teach others, perhaps a service you could provide. And maybe you have some work that needs doing around the house, just once or on an ongoing basis. But you'd like to save your money. The Time Trade Circle might just be the answer you've been looking for, and then some. For Ann Ellinger and Lynn Rosenbaum, I'm Peter Bermudes for Arlington Public News.